to this very first episode of this special podcast series we are conducting. So we are from the Counselling and Development Unit. I'm Nalini and this is...
I'm Eileen.
And I'm Sarah.
Yeah, so in the honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, so it's October, in case you guys didn't know, this is the month for mental health awareness. So throughout this month, we will be releasing 4 episodes to have conversations about mental health. Yeah.
Yep, true. So the first episode today that you are watching is basically called Counselling 101. It's also called The Heart of a Counsellor, and basically what we're doing is we're introducing and trying to expand the understanding of counselling and our roles as counsellors in the practice. What do you think about that, Sarah?
Yeah, I agree. And one of the main purpose for running this episode is because there are a lot of different mental health professionals out there and people tend to get confused. So we do want to explain specifically what counselling is and what counsellors do so that people know when to reach out for our services and what to expect.
Yeah.
Alright, so let's dive into what counselling is first, right? Let's go to the basics first. I think just understanding that role first would be very, very important.
So the definition of what counselling is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you were to Google it, the very basic definition of counselling is that it is this professional mental health service where a counsellor would work with clients through their personal challenges or experiences or emotions that are difficult, and usually the counsellor and client would set some goals that they would work together to achieve. So it's done through this process of talking about the issues and helping the clients to gain certain insights or strategies that they can use in their daily lives outside of the sessions, which I'm pretty sure we all do that with our clients.
Yeah. I think maybe some people who have done counselling would also recognize it. It's and they'll go but it's not in that order. And I think that's also one of the things. Counselling is actually pretty fluid. You don't follow a set order in the sense that your client comes in, then the first session is let's set goals. Because I've had clients who come in, I don't know, I got no goals, and it's it's okay, you can just come in and let's talk it through and let's explore, and then eventually they do find a goal that they want to work towards, but it's not always first, second, or third session, and I think sometimes they get a bit hung up on that, and so it's I don't know what my goal is.
There's no that fixed structure or fixed order in which what should come first, and sometimes it can be just that first session of just dropping in whatever thoughts or whatever experiences you've had, and then you just want to share it out and think out loud. So it doesn't have to be in that order of set goals and then work towards it. But if we are able to set it, then that will be it will have a clearer direction, but it doesn't have to always have that direction.
Not a must, right?
And not every session needs to be working towards that goal.
Right.
Some sessions could be this, I want to come in and just vent about something so that I can move on with my day, get the emotions out.
That's true. I think there's quite a lot of these kind of beliefs or myths going around about mental health therapy in that sense.
Yeah, definitely. There is that so for example in school or uni, the common narrative is that it's maybe because of disciplinary issues, and that's why you're mandated to see a counsellor to work on your behavior. And if you're seeing a counsellor, you have a problem. So it's things like this, so very interesting things. And that reminded me when you said the most common question that we get asked, do you think I have this? Do you think I have ADHD? Do you think I have depression? Do you think I have anxiety? So that is a whole it's conversation on its own. But these are
almost seeping into the mind reading thing. Can you read my mind? I wish I could, but I can't. Can you read my mind? It's fixed in one session. It just takes one session. I'm supposed to be better after this kind of thing.
It's a doctor's visit, right? And actually talking about that, I think that that also feeds into trying to teach the client, informing them I can't actually tell you whether you do or don't, because then it also kind of devolves into psychoeducation, because then we have to actually tell them as a counsellor, yes, I can run this assessment for you, but it's not a diagnosis. All it tells me is you have indications that you may have anxiety, you may have depression, you may have such and such and such.
The symptoms
of it. But to get an actual diagnosis, which is actually a very much more in-depth thing, and it takes more than a single session, you would generally have to go either to a clinical psychologist or barring that a psychiatrist, especially I think in terms of medication. So usually how I would differentiate it for my clients is if you only need an assessment, just go to a clin psych. If you think you may need medication, if it's that bad, your clin psych will either refer you to a psychiatrist or you can go to a psychiatrist for a diagnosis. But if you're looking for an official diagnosis with a letter, something to prove it for insurance, for work purpose, or whatever, you need to go to either of these two because as a counselor, I'm not qualified to do that. And I think people get mixed up because mental health therapy is like, oh, you're all mental health therapists, how come you don't do it?
Yeah, exactly. And they get confused, like what exactly is the difference? So counselling, right, because you see counsellors in different settings, that's not a hospital, it could be like in universities and things like that. So there is this thing like, do I just come in here to chit chat and talk?
Yes.
And that's just really not it, because it is this very complex process. The relationship between the client and therapist matters, the things we talk about, the things we explore, the techniques, the insights. It's so much more work than just a chit chat that you do with your friends or anybody else in your life. And I think that's something that a lot of people misunderstand as well.
Yeah, and that brings to also the whole thing about how it's not the same as talking to a friend. How your friend can't be a therapist, your therapist can't be a friend also. So that is there's something we can talk a bit more later on, the boundaries in this therapist-client therapeutic relationship. And this is where just understanding, maybe just in uni setting first, what exact roles we do and don't do. So it's great that you clarified. Main thing that we don't do is giving diagnosis. So that is something that only clinical psychologists and psychiatrists do. But the proper full assessment is something that clinical psychologists are qualified to do, and we don't do that. So whereas I think our role is more so on say if you do have symptoms of anxiety or depression, so our focus can still be on managing the symptoms without medications. If say it's the severity of the symptoms are not to that extent where you need medications, right? So this is where people can at the end of the day have that question of so what exactly do you guys do? So that makes the whole assumption. So is it just chit chat? It's valid but also not.
It's not just chit chat. It's I've heard a lot of but I have friends in my life, so I don't really need this, right? But it's different. It's a completely different relationship, completely different process altogether.
I mean, friends are really good to have as the support system, which is why it's really good when you have a client who says that I do have friends I can confide in, because they make up that network that actually does kind of catch you. That's your safety net. Counselors come in when that's not enough. When it's not enough for you to just call your friend and go oh my god, do you know what they said to me today, and guess what happened, and la 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 la, and then you feel better, but you don't feel better, and then it lingers, and it stays in your mind, and it starts interrupting your life. At this point, that's when normally the counsellor has to come in, because then you basically mired yourself into either spiral in a corner and you don't know how to get out. And that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to sort of help you lay down a new part of your floor so that you can come out of the corner or something.
And it makes sense, and that's why we went through all this training. We are trained professionals to create this new path from them that friends are not expected to know sometimes.
Exactly. So while those are key aspects to support someone's journey through healing and whatnot, our role as counselors here is focused more so on offering this non-biased view and perspectives to and insights especially to situations that would be key in this whole healing journey. So that is something that and which is why we as therapists can't actually be the therapist for our friends or family, because we are emotionally invested. We will have biased opinions, or even to a point coming from a place of care, we'll be this is what you should do. Whereas in counselling, we don't do that. We don't offer those advice of here's what you need to do.
That's true. I think that's something that sometimes people who come in also have that particular mindset, which is I don't know what to do, so I came here so that I'm looking for advice, whether you can tell me what I should do. And that's the big thing about counselling, is we don't tell you what to do. We talk to you and we go through your options, but at the end of the day, responsibility is still yours. It's still the client. You decide what you want to do. It's not what we do.
And in evaluating the options that you do have, right? The most we do is, so say you take option A to the question of what should I do here. So we will explore, what are the options available. So option A has these pros and cons, and say there are unhealthy aspects to it. So as professionals, we point out the unhealthy aspects to that. So that's the most we do, and of course we just lay it all in front of you. At the end of the day, you are the one to decide what you're about to do and things like that. So that's why it can bum out clients when you're like, oh, I can't answer that. And they'll be like, but just tell me what to do. It's easier.
Can't say I haven't experienced it.
And something I always tell them is that you're just seeing me for 1 hour once a week. Every other hour you're with yourself. It's very important to see all the things we lay out and then make your decision based on that, because you're the one experiencing your life. You're the one with access to all your thoughts, all your feelings, all your experiences. So we do play that role, but it does have, it stops somewhere too. At the end of the day, the decision maker is on them, like you guys have said.
And that's that very important aspect to that is that it is empowering in a way that your life is actually in your hands, and who could be a better expert of your own life other than you, right? Because you are the only person wearing your shoes.
True.
So you are at the end of the day expert, but we are the expert in the sense that we have the clinical perspectives, we are mental health professionals, but what is best for your life is something that only you can tell and only you can decide. That's just something that I usually tell my clients.
Very true, because at the end of the day we advocate for their independence, right? Moving on their own, not relying on us forever.
I mean, it is also part of like the ethical guidelines that you have to empower your client, to make sure that they are able to make judgments rationally and free of bias. It's like we can't coerce, we cannot influence. At the most, we can just show you these are the options that you have based on what you've told me, lah. And then go for that. Which is brings a very good point about what you said. Like they know themselves best. What other common misconceptions have you run across, like in your time?
Common misconception.
There was one. Obviously, one is like all clients are crazy. You got mental problems, okay? Which is not repeatedly untrue. One session will cure it. I would also like to point out it's not a cure, okay?
Fix.
We don't fix.
You're not broken.
Cure. You're not broken for so long.
Yeah.
And for some things you will probably realize, or at least other people tell you, things like anxiety, depression, they come, they go, they're ongoing. We work more on coping, learning how to live with it, how to make sure it doesn't interrupt your life, how to work around it. But it's there. So there's no one pill, one session, I'm done.
For sure. And the mind reading, and I think something I always hear is also like you have to be at like this crisis state to get help.
Right.
It's just like clients come in and they're like, oh, but it's like it's not bad enough or things like that. Like that comparison of like who has it worse, who has it better. But you don't do the same when it comes to physical health, whether it's like a sprained ankle or like a cold. You would go to the doctor, right? You don't need to wait to this like severe stage for you to seek help. It doesn't mean you only deserve help at that state. So that's like something also that maybe a lot of people tend to have in their minds. Maybe it comes from like, I think back in like, I don't know, centuries ago when there's like mental health issues, you would do like a brain surgery or so maybe it comes from that like if I'm just a little bit upset, I don't need to like talk about it because
I think it also maybe comes from the fact that it's unseen.
Yes, it's
a
very
lot
abstract.
of it's very like if you have mild anxiety, if you have stage fright, if you have social anxiety, we mask very well. You don't really see it except like I don't want to go out, I don't want to be in large crowds, I don't want a presentation, that kind of thing. And then it's not a big problem. The problem is I think some people don't realize like if you don't attend to these things early, as an adult you start having issues, you don't want to go to work functions, you cannot meet clients, you can't do these kind of things. And what it does is it narrows down what you can do in real life. And that's when you start going like, maybe I should have seen or should go and see someone. But when in fact like early on when you already start feeling uncomfortable and you're not sure whether it's a problem or not, you can actually come and see the counsellor first. Just talk it out, and sometimes we can provide like coping mechanisms or certain skills that you could try to calm yourself down, relax better, acclimatize, prepare yourself better. And a lot of them don't have that. So I think a part of it is just sight unseen because you don't see them until the person is like having a panic attack, the person has become completely shut into their house, stuff like that. Then you go like, there's a problem.
Exactly.
So if you don't see it, there's no problem.
It's like you compare how valid that problem is.
Exactly. That is very true. And the measure of like how severe is considered valid, right? So with mental health that is the challenge because of how abstract all of it is. It's not as clear cut with physical health, right? Like say if it's a tumor, then you can scan, you can know where it is, where the problem is. But mental health, there is that abstract aspect to it that makes it even more challenging, easy to invalidate, easy to dismiss. Yeah, and that's where all the misconception comes from also, I feel.
Yeah. And I think it ties in with the stigma that comes with it as well. You know, it's still a lot of times you get people like, I don't want my friends to know I'm coming.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want my family doesn't know I'm here. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's very understandable also.
Yeah.
Because it comes with heavy judgments, things like we commonly hear about like, you're not strong enough, you're not praying enough. That gets to me a lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, look, she's got the bigger thing coming on.
It's like an Asian thing also where it's taboo to talk about your emotions. You're supposed to be this strong, that's life approach. You don't need to talk about everything. You don't need to tell other people what problems you have, what problems your family has. You're supposed to just portray yourself to be very composed, have it all together, protect the family name, so on and so forth. Yeah.
Very true.
Yeah.
Let's move on. Let's talk a little bit about us.
Yeah.
A bit about us, our job as a counsellor. I think we touched on it a little bit just now. We're talking about like how we. I know you feel very strongly about this, like how we're trained and we have the skills for it. You know, I'm not just here to chit chat you like the market auntie.
Yes. Louder.
And I think we did mention things like, you know, we do emotional support in the sense that we do we affirm, you know, what you're feeling, it's valid, you know, we don't sit there and go like, oh, you shouldn't feel that way. Oh no, that's bad. That's not what we do. The validation is just that yes, you have a right to feel it because every person has a right to their own personal feelings. So that's where the validation comes in. Our role is basically not to judge what you are feeling. We acknowledge, and then after that we just basically we move on from there because right they come in with that emotion, and then after that, this is what's bothering me, and like la 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 la. So it's like yeah, okay, valid. And then what is it that's bothering you then? And then we move from there. Right, that's what the counsellor does, and I think that's the biggest difference I think between friend, auntie, relative chit chat and counselling itself, which is that we have been trained to come and look at the source of the trouble.
Yeah. Right. So usually, instead of that, we approach with curiosity. So actually that's a good question. Why are you, having this sort of like really strong emotions in this situation? What is causing you to feel this way? Understanding that. So the goal is to have that understanding. What is these emotions? Because emotions are constantly communicating something to us. So what are these emotions telling? For those, it helps us to understand ourselves better and discover ourselves each time.
Yeah. And I guess because we are this objective person that sees the link between certain things, and so we lay it out for them. Because when you are in that position yourself, maybe it's hard to see where it's coming from or how certain behaviors are like repeating or certain patterns are happening again.
Right.
And something that you said just now about like validating feelings, right? I sometimes view like the role of a counselor, it's kind of helping clients to go back to the basics of being a human being, where whatever you feel, you're just allowed to feel. Like when you're a baby and you cry, you just cry. You're angry, and you're just allowed to. And if something hurts, it's painful, you would just yell or something, right? But then maybe because of the things that we hear growing up, where it's just like shut down or it's not accepted and things like that, then as adults, it becomes hard to validate our feelings. So sometimes a counselor we help clients to unlearn and relearn that on how to just be a human being, not a robot. So it reminded me of that.
And with the balance of like feeling it but not letting it turn into like very maladaptive behaviors or like dangerous behaviors, like how we can hold space for those emotions and at the same time be in control of our behaviors as well.
I think that's also part of what the counsellor does, is that once we do find your patterns or you find like the maladaptive behaviors, then it is, it's laid down to the client, like, how do you want to address it? Do you want to work on it? Again, come down to choice. The counsellor always opens the choice to the client. That says yes, then it's like, okay. Then that's when the other part of being a counsellor, which is the coping skills, the the retraining, the regulations of emotions and all that, the all those different things. When we talk about, like, you're gonna hear this a lot, mindfulness, like being aware, that kind of thing. That's where it comes in, and this is where the training comes in as well. It's like, don't rush it, trying to work them through step by step, and that's basically something that your counselor, as a counselor, you work with them and you understand that it takes time. It's also about, I think the counselor provides that safe space to explore the behaviors so that you can actually find the source of it, and then two, to explore the mechanism. So and this I think is also a very big thing, I feel, for clients, which is if the initial coping mechanism fails, it doesn't work, there's nothing wrong with that. Again, it's affirmation and validation that it's okay. You as an individual may need something different. This is something that I normally try to tell my clients when I first start giving them any kind of new skill or mechanism to try out, which is, if it doesn't work, it's okay. If you find that you're not good at it or it's not helping you, that's also okay. If you fail on your first try, on your first day, it's also okay.
You're not expected to.
You as long as you try and you're going on and you realize that sometimes, I've had clients who tried once or twice, and I did it 2 times and it didn't work for me. And I say, okay, do you feel like it's not suitable? She said, no, I just didn't have time. So okay, then you try to regulate, try to do it more often, and then we'll see. Sometimes it works, and sometimes they come back like, I'm falling asleep, I can't do this one. So then okay, we find alternative, but nothing wrong with not working.
It's about finding what works for you, and it's okay that like the first try isn't what is something that works for you. You can always keep trying, and it's not to be demotivated. It's something for us to just experiment and figure out as we go.
It doesn't need to be this like a me problem, like it's a flaw. If it doesn't work, it means there's something wrong with me because it works for everybody else. But there's just no such rule like that, right? Because we're all different. I think you mentioned it a few times. So what works for us may not work for someone else. Even on the first try or the 100th try, maybe it might just never work. So it's just about finding what works for you, which I guess that's counselling as a whole compared to Google, where there's this list of like, this is what you can try, but counselling is like personalized to the client, what works for them. So
that's true. It's very individualistic, and I think like in terms of having a good counsellor also helps in the sense that a counsellor has to have all those basic requirements of, like, as we mentioned, we keep mentioning this, and it's really important, being non-judgmental, being open-minded, just being accepting, being an active listener to understand and to just be present with the client. I think all those things like make that really good counsellor that then will be able to give that right kind of support, that right kind of guidance.
And that's where the skills that we are specifically trained in does come in to help uphold all of this as we, journey together with you in your process.
We're not lawless, by the way. We do have boundaries and ethics.
Yes, I thought of it when you said, we don't follow you home.
Yes.
Like the boundaries.
Yes. I think that is a very important topic, the boundaries, because we can easily be seen as like, because I've opened up this much to this person, and initially it was a stranger, and now like I'm so comfortable with my therapist, and like she could be my friend.